All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Crossing Swords. And I think, as always, this time, I'm Andrew.
And as always, I'm here with another one of my classic witty intros.
Yeah, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah, that's why I do the pod. It's the only thing that
They're a
keeps me
trademark.
going. Yeah,
I'm thinking of trademarking them.
I think you
Thinking
should.
of taking out a thing on it.
Just anything about witty intros, it's licensed to you. People have to pay you a commission. Doesn't matter what they're talking about, as long as it's witty.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is I then get to spend hours consuming TV and radio.
Yeah.
To keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
You know, for legal purposes.
To be fair, you can use your family's team. Like, get the butlers involved.
Oh, yeah, I know I will. Listen, there's a lot of channels.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll probably watch...
Especially if they're ethnic, they can cover the ethnic channels for you.
I mean, that's massively racist. We actually...
Well, they are ethnic.
We actually don't employ any ethnics.
What did you get rid of them? Poor Consuela. She's gone.
We were just worried about these new tightening immigration laws.
Yeah.
We didn't want it.
Shishang's gone.
They're all gone.
They're all gone.
They're all gone.
So how many have you hired to replace them?
Oh, hired is a strong word. We don't pay them either.
Oh, no. It's a Mo Farah situation, is it?
No. It's
Sorry, it's not a laughing matter.
It's Mo Farah adjacent.
Yeah, it's similar, but not...
Yeah, we don't actually traffic them in.
No. Someone else does that.
Someone else does that for us. We outsource.
What a way to start the pod, man.
Yeah, just
casual slavery, trafficking.
Full on racism and slavery.
Yeah. But by the way, legit though, that is a sad story.
Yeah, it's quite
I genuinely was taken aback by it. I didn't expect it at all. Yeah, it's just I'd love to know like what his real name is and where he came from and all of that. Do you know what I mean?
It's all in the documentary.
I'll have to watch it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it out on?
iPlayer, I think.
Okay.
Might be ITV Hub.
The Mo Farah documentary, I'm guessing.
I'm fairly certain if you just search Mo Farah, you'll probably find it.
It's not going to be hard to find.
I wouldn't have imagined.
No, fair enough. I mean, the level of disgust you're looking at me with at the moment, I can't tell what it's for.
No disgust. No
conversation
disgust.
after
no disgust. Just my face.
Just your face.
Just my face.
Just rest in disgust face.
Yeah. And it's because I'm so used to just judging everyone around me.
That is quite the middle upper class thing, isn't it? It's a disgust of the lower class.
What do you think? We've lost money? You think we're down in the middle upper class?
Yeah.
You insult me.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's sad, but it's true.
Say another word, another remark like that, and I shall have the butler come in and slap you outside your head.
Sorry, sir.
Thank you. Show the respect.
Right. So I think today we're going to sort of stay on a similar vein of previous episodes of just picking a few things we want to talk about, having a good old chat.
Yeah, I think the what's happening at the moment as we record these podcasts is generally quite a lot's happening. It's quite fast moving.
Yeah,
in the world of news.
And one of the things with doing a podcast is you find yourself, and at first it's conscious, but it becomes very unconscious, is you don't actually end up talking as much outside of the podcast because you want to save it for the podcast. So it's just a good format to basically get to talk about the things we would talk about by text and enjoy and do it on the podcast.
Which is the whole point when we started this thing a few years ago, we just wanted to be like, we were having a chat in a pub and people listening in.
And we still want to do more in-depth dives on subjects when we come across them because we don't want to be sort of trite in covering something for a small amount of time. Like we both really like to talk about what's going on with trans people at the moment and everything that's going against them and all LGBTQ stuff, but it's stuff that you need to have a long time to cover, really.
You need to do a bit of research.
You want to give it justice as well. And you want it to seem like, we're being reasonable and not blokey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's fair.
So, who's starting us off today, Jake?
Well, do you know what? It's the last couple of weeks, I think it's been me, so I think it's only fair that this time you start us off.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's great. I've got one. No, I'm joking.
No, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the rail strikes.
Fantastic, 'cause it's up there for me as well.
Yeah. And just first off, what do you think of the rail strikes?
I mean, absolutely support it, and I feel a little bit sorry for anyone that doesn't support it because I feel like they've been tricked into thinking. I think there's a few, for me, I thought about this the other day. I think there's a few categories of people who don't support the rail strikes. There are the classic, I suffered, why shouldn't everyone else suffer? My conditions were shit at work, my pay was shit, I was easily let go and whatever else, why shouldn't everyone else be in the same situation? then there are the ones that are, you know, because the fact that some of the senior Tory governments wrote it's more a booklet than a book.
Yeah.
But basically saying that English workers are the laziest in the world, and just no one, you know, they don't want to work.
One of the people that co-wrote that book is currently very likely to be our next
PM.
female PM.
Second ever female PM, according to one news source, which was always quite amusing.
That was brilliant. That did make me laugh.
That was good. Just which one do you think they forgot?
It's definitely Theresa May, isn't it?
No, I just like to think that everyone.
Thatcher.
I like to think everyone's blocked Thatcher out of their mind.
No, she's still very much part of like the underlying zeitgeist of this country.
And the Tory party at the moment. No, but sorry, so there's the ones who are like, I suffered, everyone else should suffer. Then I think there's, like I said, the sympathy ones I have sympathy for, the ones that are tricked into thinking that people in this country are lazy. That they are trying to get something for nothing. And they're the ones who are trying to think how to phrase this. They sort of think, you know, when they go, well, English workers are lazy, and they go, they're right. They are, not me.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not. When they're talking about me, when they're talking about workers, they're talking about me. I'm not lazy, but everyone else is. And I think, I mean, I forget off the top of my head what the third one I came up with was, but those are definitely the two most prominent ones. And the thing that always makes me laugh and upsets me at the same time about the ones who are, I suffered, everyone else should suffer. And in fact, I was listening to, and I think you may have been listening to the same broadcast. Was it James O'Brien or Nick Ferrari?
I watched one with James O'Brien where he called the guy out for basically being jealous.
Right, yeah, no, so it was James O'Brien. And it was basically the guy called in and he was like...
he was a member of the armed forces previously, at like reserve level, I think, so, you know, like the territorial army sort of level. And basically...
The army had a restructure.
It was always in his contract that they could do it, but because he didn't understand his terms and conditions, he was caught off guard. The army restructured and let go of thousands of men, including him.
Yeah.
So he was left with no job, no notice, just gone. And his rationale was because he was treated like that.
Well, yeah, and he was like, well, I was dumb enough to sign the contract.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but do you not think that you want people to have better conditions than just because you didn't understand what you were signing up for? Do you not think that you want people to have... And he just, every time he came back to it, like you said, all it came back to is, I never had those conditions.
So why should
they? Yeah. And he tried and frame it in different ways. And I think one of the ways he tried to frame it was he sort of tried to... He made that... And people love making this comparison. They go, train drivers, first of all, train drivers are not the ones on strike.
No, it's the surrounding workforce.
It's the ticket office workers, it's the engineers, it's the... it's all those guys, it's the cleaners, it's the gate line assistants, it's all those guys that are on strike. But... He goes, well, train drivers are on like £48,000 a year, and junior doctors are on like £40,000 a year, and it's like, right. So the argument is not why are they paid more; it's why are they paid less. Yeah, you know, and it's just people aren't able to frame that. Bottom? Exactly. You had a little bit of notoriety off that, off of LBC.
It was like 27 likes. I responded to a post. It was about, and it's one of the things I wanted to talk about, so we might as well.
Oh no, sorry, no, you're right. No, we should leave that. We should get to that. We should get to that.
So. In regards to, like, the first inconsistency with the level of thinking of being like that is that it's so counterintuitive. It's such a backwards way of thinking. And your anger shouldn't be, why can they demand better conditions? It should be, why can't all of us?
Yeah, and do you know what? I think people need to have a bit more... Why don't the government want us to have that? Yeah, I think people need to have a bit more respect and understanding. And I think it is understanding. It's always about knowledge of the trade unions. And so what striking, and sometimes they've been less than amicable strikes, let's say, in the past. Yeah. But striking is the reason that we only work 5 days a week. Yeah. Predominantly, obviously, some people work more, some people work. Striking is the reason that we are entitled to lunch breaks. Yeah. You know, legally, you're entitled to 30-minute break for every 6 hours that you do. Now, that's not a lot, ultimately. No, but if you do a 12-hour shift, you're only getting out. But you wouldn't even have that if it weren't for striking and if it weren't for unions. Unions are the reason that we no longer employ children. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are all things that we go, well, they're just common sense. Like, no, they're not. We had to fight for them. Yeah, and they're the reason also why you have things like a mandatory amount of time between shifts, because otherwise your employer would quite happily force you to work back to back with very little time off. And statutory sick pay is garbage. But they're the reasons we have statutory sick pay. Yeah, if it wasn't for that, we'd have maternity pay. Yeah. And paternity pay and paternity leave and maternity leave. These are all things the unions have given us. That unions and strike action have given us. And like I said, people look at it and they go, well, they're common sense. Obviously, we're going to have those. And it's like, no, Not obviously.
No.
Okay, and
they're trying to
have
change it, and they will change it.
And I think
the really worrying thing is at the moment, the movement we're going in and it's a question I have because I don't understand how the general public can be convinced that the workforce they're a part of is idle, lazy and doesn't deserve better paying conditions.
No.
But yet if you asked everyone on an individual level, I reckon in general, most people would say they deserve more money for the job they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yet don't support collective action. And
I think most people are like me in that what I want from, if I work full time, and I do work full time, I want to be able to afford a place to live. I'm not asking for anything. One bedroom. With my own
just to
private,
have a roof over your head.
My own private toilet and kitchen, which I can't afford on my wages, to be able to feed myself. To be able to obviously maintain myself, clothe myself, get haircuts if I cut my hair. You know, washing products, cleaning products, all that kind of stuff. And to be able to have a small amount of disposable income that I can use to treat myself, maybe eat out once in a while, go to the cinema once in a while.
Have a life
maybe
working.
even save up for a holiday. I'm quite good at getting holidays on the cheap. I'm quite good at travelling on budgets. But that's what I want from being able to work full time. I think, and I don't think that's unreasonable demand. And I think most people in the country, working class people, are in my situation. I think that's what they want from being able to work full time. To not have to rely on some kind of other supplementation to be able to afford to live.
And
that's just the financial stuff.
Jack Monroe, who's amazing, I really like them. And they tweeted something the other day, which was about the amount of money, if you collated it for the year for the government, that it costs them to top up just supermarket workers' pay with benefits because they don't earn enough working even full time in supermarkets, equals 50% of the profits supermarkets make per year.
Yeah, and they still make profits.
The point, they would still make
profits.
Still make a shitload of money, just not as much to pay their workers fairly.
Yeah, it's and then, like I said, it's not just the pay. It's the conditions such as, like we talked about, breaks and
even your contracted hours.
Yeah, and
to
also
have some stability.
The we'll talk about job security. All that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, it's not unreasonable to ask.
No, it's not.
And Dominic Raab has been gunning for Human Rights Act for a while. And the reason he wants to gun for the Human Rights Act more than anything, and I've said, not necessarily said this on the pod, but I've been saying this for a long time, is so that he can tear up workers' rights. It's the reason that the people who that's unfair on 40 odd million people. It's the reason 16, 17 million people, but it's the reason that the campaigners who campaigned to leave the EU so that we can take back control of being able to cut the human rights and cut our workers' rights.
For big business, it's the last regulated part of business, really, is what they can do to their workers. If they can squeeze their workers even more, that's more profit. And it's not going to stop.
No. And I think
that's... And the question I want to explore within this is, why would any government be okay with this happening to their population?
They don't care about the population.
Well, no, because the truth of it is, political parties, and particularly the Tories, will have a lot of donations coming from big businesses that want them to believe in these things. And that's the thing. None of these politicians actually believe in any of the things they're doing.
No.
And we're the ones who pay for it constantly.
No, and what they are very good at doing is investing a fair amount of that money into PR. And it's a relationship that works both ways. They get all this money from these people. And in return, the people feed the narrative to us, the public, through sort of independent news channels and through newspapers, magazines, websites, that kind of stuff, through social media, to say that actually, that whole thing of pissing on us and telling us it's rain, the government will piss on us, and in return for, as well as some of the money, what they'll also get is the companies who are paying them all this money to convince us that it's raining. To convince us not only that it's raining, that we need the rain actually, and the rain's quite good for us.
And the politicians that get involved in all this shit are guaranteed to be settled for life when they get out of politics. They get nice little cushy advisor jobs where they have to turn up once a month to a meeting to rake in millions a year. But like, none of this is not out in the open. Do you know what I mean? It's like Boris Johnson himself. Everything about him was always available. It was well known, but we just don't. I don't know what it is. Is it fear? Are we so afraid of what might happen?
I think it's a kind of. I think definitely with the Brexit thing, it's a stubborn. And I realise that's not necessarily what we're talking about, but it's a stubbornness for a lot of people not to be able to admit that they were so spectacularly duped. There's a.
Well, I don't even know if you have to admit you were duped. Just admit this isn't working.
There's an old saying, and it's I can't remember who it's not that old. I think it's like 19th, 20th century author. He said that it's easier to convince a man that he's. It's easier to lie to a man than to convince him that he's been lied to.
Yeah.
And I think that is true. People don't want to believe that they've been conned into this, so then you bury your heads in the sand.
I think one of the other parts of it, though, like one of the things that stops people is like the options to fix what's going wrong are so radical. Like the things you'd have to do to turn things around and make things fundamentally different would be radical.
Yeah, and because
like Jeremy Corbyn level shit of we're going to have to nationalise some industries.
Because we've drifted slowly away from where we need to be.
We've gone so far the other way that the only option would be to go extremely the other way, which would have its own issues. I mean, we'd have to start nationalising. Like, I don't understand at what point it stops. Like, Martin Lewis is scaring the shit out of me at the moment with his predictions of what the price cap's going to be, and like people are just not going to pay their bills. And what are they going to do?
I did want to talk to you about this. There is a campaign for that, and I do want to, we'll hopefully get onto that.
But just
let me ask you this. Sorry.
No, I just feel like with the rail strikes at the moment, I find it frustrating that the narrative is 100% about why train drivers have it good and not why are we all in the shit.
And and again, first of all, it's that clever thing from the government who are not really actively taking part in a lot of these discussions.
Yeah.
But the clever thing is to say, well, it's train drivers. It's like it's not about the train drivers.
No.
This RMT strike is not about the train drivers. We know someone who's a member of the RMT who is on strike, who will be going on strike in the next round of strikes.
As to whether they would.
They are not a train driver. They do not earn a lot of money. They earn more than I do.
Yeah.
Only a little bit.
Yeah.
Like the golf is not massive.
No.
And they earn quite well within the realms of their company. Like
yeah. It's not bad.
They're by no means
still not.
They're by no means the bottom earners.
No, but not really comfortable either. If that makes sense.
No, and it's like again, it's that clever thing. But let me ask you this about the RMT strikes. What do you make of the news that broke? It's obviously it's just attempts to sully the unions, because I think if you go and speak to people in the streets, which I'm sure you may well have done working in a public facing role as you do, and certainly speaking to colleagues and stuff, generally the support is there.
It's weird. Unions. At work, people haven't really been talking about it. It's been more about the ladies' football, which just, by the way, congrats to the women for making it to the final. And good luck for Sunday.
Yes, and we will be doing a podcast
at time
on
of release,
that.
we will. But Jake made a good point, because I was going to talk about it this week, but he was like, well, why don't we wait until...
Yeah, because what we do is when we release on a Sunday, we'll release an episode, and then like an hour or two later, within like 5 or 6 hours,
they would have played the
final.
They'll
have either been winners or runners up.
Yeah, so it'll be easier to talk about post rather than pre, which is fair.
Although I'll tell you what, I can two things. Whose goal was better, Beth Mead's or Alicia Russo's? Because I guarantee they both score. Or Potts. In fact, she's been...
Mead the long range one that everyone was going... Because I only saw the back-heel one.
That was Russo, yeah.
I've got to be honest with you. I saw that and I was like, what is the keeper doing? If I was in that...
she also got caught out by Fran Kirby's goal, who lobbed her, where it was like... And the panel discussed this at the halfway point. They said she likes to play a really high... line so as from a goalkeeper's perspective, so it is easy to catch her out. She's, I think they all said it respectfully, like she's had an incredible career, but she's past her prime, and she's coming to the end of
if I was in, was it the Sweden team?
Yeah, Sweden.
If I was in that defence, because Lindahl was the goalkeeper, I wouldn't have been massively impressed.
No, I'd have been thinking, for the lob.
Like if Alex did that at Power League, you'd have yelled at him for. Don't apologise if you're not going to change.
Well, we're not letting that
Making him cry.
We're not letting that go, huh?
No.
But yes, sorry. So what I was going to say is...
we got completely sidetracked.
It's obviously an attempt to sully the union.
Yeah.
But what do you make of the whole thing about Eddie Dempsey, who is I think he's like basically the underling to Mick Lynch.
Yeah.
And the fact that he lives in a council house in London. And there's this outrage because he's on. First of all, I think this did annoy me, and
How much does he earn?
Well, this is the thing. So I want to say two things. First of all, I'm usually quite a fan of Nick Ferrari. I actually usually think he handles things pretty well.
I've gone off of him in recent years. I think he's gone a bit right wingish.
Well, I'll tell you what really annoyed me was he was talking.
I don't know. He takes stances on things I wouldn't have expected based off of other characteristics.
Well, this week he was asking Mick Lynch about the Eddie Dempsey situation, the story that broke.
Yeah.
And he was saying he's on a 6-figure salary, and Mick Lynch was like,
so
"Well,
we're talking 100."
He went, "He's not on a 6-figure salary." He says, "I know what I pay him because I pay him."
Yeah.
He says, "Not a 6-figure salary." Who am I talking about?
Nick Ferrari.
Nick Ferrari is in the studio and he goes, "Oh, yes, I think the figure is sort of £82,706. Is that right?" And it was like, so you had the figure.
Yeah.
So why are you saying 6 figures?
Yeah.
You had the figure in front. You knew what the figure was.
Yeah,
You're just trying to stir up this story.
Inflame it and.
But he's on like 80 grand a year.
Right.
But just to be clear, so at
how long has he lived there?
So he's lived there for he was there when he was, I think he's been there about 8 or 9 years, something like that. He's
and he
lived
wouldn't
there
have
with
been
his
earning
family.
that much when he first started.
So just to be
there.
clear, at point of recording, it's sort of back end of July.
Yeah.
He got the trade union job.
Yeah.
As the position he's in now in October last year.
So he's not been.
So he's not even been in the job a year.
And let's be honest, he would have been spending that time getting his feet under the table,
and
not worrying about house hunting.
As people has come to his defence, and I think I would come to his defence and say, so at what point, when someone gets a new job with a very big pay promotion, do you have to move out? What point do you have to say, right, well, you're too rich for this place now, fuck off? Well, he does like living there. Yeah. His family is, he's raised his family there. Do you know what I mean? He's raising his family
before
there.
He earned that amount of money, he was happy to live there. And everyone else was happy for him to live there. So what? Now he's become more successful.
Also,
he's not allowed to live
you're
there.
You're on £80,000 a year. So as soon as that first pay packet comes in, you've got to pack your bags and fuck off.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if you knew the story.
For long enough, couldn't he still buy the place?
Just wanted to know if you knew the story and what you made
of
it.
No, I didn't know it. It's another, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Because if you're working class and he comes across as someone who definitely comes from working class background, hence
this
probably
is the
why
thing
he's a
about
member of the RN.
Apart from Mick Lynch, who was a unionist from pretty much when he left school, every other member and senior member of the R&T union are voted in from their positions on the railway.
Okay.
They have to be working on the railway before they are elected to represent either at a low level or at a high level, as Eddie Dempsey is.
Yeah.
So they are all workers.
Yeah.
They have all been workers. So when they're representing the people, they were doing their job.
Earning far less than that, much less than that.
Yeah.
So he's worked very hard. He's earned his position. I couldn't it's so irrelevant. It's a blatant attempt, as you said, to muddy the waters, to paint a how ridiculous is it from a Tory administration to try and make out workers, unionists, to be above their station, or do you know what I mean?
I know when these guys are on, when these guys have got 2-3 houses.
Oh, and one of our next prime ministers, his wife's comes from billions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're worried about a Labour unionist living in a council house.
And as was rightfully turned around when they went, as Nick Ferrari sort of said, well, what about, the fact that there are lots of people on the waiting list? And Mick Lynch went, well, surely the argument then is, why is it that this government have spent 10 years promising to build more affordable houses and built none?
I loved it. There's a compilation of Liz Truss being completely fucking useless. And there's one where
I imagine that took a long time to edit down to just a short clip.
And there was one. Was it? I can't remember which political commentator it was, but he was asked. He said someone was making a comment about and she's like, "We didn't get to build as many as we would have liked." And he was like, "And how many was that, Liz? Because I've got the number." And she was like, "Oh, I don't know."
Was that the BBC guy? I can't think of his name, but I know the
one. The baldish guy that's
yeah.
And he's like, "I've got the number here. Do you want to say it?" She's like, "Oh, I don't remember what the exact number." He's like, 0, Liz.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy number to remember.
It's easy. 0. And she just...
Yeah, shakes it off and carries on.
Yeah. This government, and this goes back to when David Cameron got elected, do not give a shit about the working class and have done everything since they've been in power to erode our position, our opinion of one another, our aspirations.
It is literally divide and conquer.
And we're at a point now where so me and my missus have actually been quite sensible. We've tried to sort out our finances. We've managed to save some money, and we're finally in a position where that if we wanted to move out, we've got a deposit to do it. But now, because of the way the prices of everything have gone up, we're going to have to hold off because I don't want to risk us looking to move into somewhere and then after a few months everything goes up and we now can't afford to live there.
Yeah.
So we're now in a position where we've actually saved up, we've actually been sensible, but now can't afford to move out.
No, and yet, no, as I said, I think it was a really interesting thing it was a really good point from Mick Lynch to just return it with that and say, well, not only they've not built any affordable houses, but they've actually been saying for the last 12 years that they will build.
Yeah,
they've been promising us
it's
they will.
It's been a manifesto promise. I would put money on the fact it's been a manifesto promise
since
every
Cameron,
government.
but particularly since the Tories have been in power, since Cameron, there's been a pledge to build more affordable housing.
I can remember it for as long as I can remember.
Yeah,
it being a pledge, and it's hard not to see anything other than an insidious reason behind why they're doing it. And that can be self-interest, but it doesn't make it any less insidious to me than if it was a grand conspiracy.
No.
Because it still shows the same level of disregard for me and you and everyone who works for a living.
Yeah. Well, sticking with the specifically the rail strikes.
Yeah.
The last point that I wanted to talk about was what do you make of the whole Sam Tarry situation?
Yeah, that was one of my things as well.
For those who don't know, Sam Tarry was the shadow transport secretary
for Labour.
So he was on the front benches of Labour.
Yeah.
He went to a picket line, got interviewed on the picket line, and he then has been removed from the front benches. Now, the Labour are saying that the reason that he's removed, just to be very clear, is that he was telling the interviewer about Labour policies.
Yeah, that haven't
been actually
they're not actually
aren't policies,
ratified.
And they're saying that you can't just go around making manifesto pledges without having it approved by the party.
Yeah.
So I do sort of understand, but at the same time I think
the image, the PR of it
as
is
I
very
said,
bad.
The goal is open wide for Labour to win the next general election, and yet Keir Starmer is doing as much as he can to kind of hinder their own chances.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. But I believe him in what he says in the sense of, basically, I don't really care how it looks. On principle, if I've issued, this is a no-go, we're not going to do it, whatever reason he's given, you've elected him as your leader, you listen. And if you don't, he's going to, regardless of the situation, regardless of how it looks for him personally, he's just going to cull you from the herd.
Yeah.
I was listening to James O'Brien talk about it, actually, and he said it's his biggest strength and his weakness, and we've talked about it, that he doesn't play the game of politics. Do you know what I mean? He's just, regardless of how it looks, he's going to do what he thinks is right. And if that means he becomes Prime Minister, amazing. If
I think that's the difference between him and Boris, is neither of them play the game of politics, but Boris,
for completely different reasons.
Boris plays to put on a show,
and
to trick everyone and to say, look over here.
Yeah.
Whereas Keir Starmer plays for, like you said, a kind of his own sense of moral pride.
What he believes in. And you don't have to agree with that, but I think just off of that alone, I still see him as a far more viable option than anything the Tories are offering. For me personally.
That's fair. So where do you think that leaves Labour?
I mean, in the eyes of the general public, their opinion aren't high enough, not as high as you need it to be in general for them to be a viable government at the next general election. I don't think they're really in a position to properly challenge. I think you'll see a swing back in Labour's direction, but I don't know whether it will be enough to get a majority. They might, if they're lucky, be able to pull off a coalition like we've had previously. But I think as to where this leaves them, worse off than they were before.
Worse off than they were a week ago, kind of thing.
And it's a shame because I think I can understand exactly why Sir Keir done it. I think what I would have probably done is perhaps, if I was Sir Keir, I would have done an appearance myself, maybe not at the strikes, but I would have come out and said, like, look, Tom's very passionate, X, Y, and Z. Those policies aren't set in stone. They're not indicative of what we want to achieve overall. And then what I would have done once everything had calmed down, he'd be gone. So I would have just done it later down the line.
Yeah, I sort of understand. Like, it's a bit of a tough one, as it is leading a political party. Is
because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like, if he hadn't got rid of him, there would have been some people that would have been like, "Oh, you need to get rid of him."
Well, this is the interesting thing about Labour for me, is that the reason that they are able to keep dropping in the polls and not taking the leads that they have is that I don't know what Labour stands for. They don't have any policies.
No, and you'd think instinctively they would want to back the strikes, but again, listening to a few radio shows, they were sort of saying that the problem is if Sir Keir Starmer nails himself to the mast in either direction, if he nails himself to the pro-strike side, the government can drag their feet even more, blame Labour for getting involved and make it a bad PR thing for Labour. So it's sort of like, I get why they haven't, but I just think overall...
Even not on this specific issue. It's like the Tories are taking sort of the far-right, anti-woke, let's make the rich richer approach on every single issue. Labour have not come out and stood their ground on and took a stance on any other issue.
It's something Boris would throw at Sir Keir at Prime Minister's questions in retort quite often, that, you know, you criticise our plan.
At least we have a
plan. But where's yours?
No, and do you know what?
And you're right, he comes out with the odd tweet saying this is what we think about this and this is how we try and do things, but there's nothing like, I want to introduce this policy, or if he is doing that, it's certainly not being
the best thing they can do
loud enough.
Is assume that there's about to be a general election.
Yeah.
And introduce a manifesto.
Yeah.
Actually get some pledges, get some policies, put them on the table, so let people know where you stand on things.
And he needs to give people face time. Like, he should be on every morning television show, big radio show, and go against difficult people. Go against people that are going to give you a bit of pushback. And, like, look, there'll be a few times he might not come off smelling the roses, but eventually, because the problem is, as we know, they need on that side someone more like a Boris that can handle themselves, doesn't get ruffled very easily under pressure, can waffle for Britain and get themselves... Like, the amount of times you'd think Sir Keir had him nailed in PMQs and Boris would just roll off of it. And I've never seen someone with the ability to do that so well. So I think Sir Keir does need to be a bit more polished. I think he needs to... I don't know. I feel like he needs a bit more force behind him, a bit more oomph maybe, but definitely needs to play politics more, because ultimately... Like, in an ideal world, Sir Keir should be Prime Minister and that sort of more principled brand of politics should be in charge. But that's not the world we live in.
The problem is, at this point, even though, and I would back Labour because I don't want the Tories. I think the Tories are doing actively damaging our country, and you can see that in almost every measurable way.
Everything they're doing.
Like, I can understand why people go, well, yeah, but I can't vote for Labour. It's like, yeah, because what do Labour stand for? What are their...
Yeah.
Like I said, they don't have any policies, they don't have any pledges.
This is a time where, as you said, it's the time to get the message out. We're at a point where if you can get across a nice, reasonable message that people can get behind, you could really garner support, especially considering how far it swung the other way. There's no reason why, if you didn't do it right, it couldn't swing back the other. But yeah, I think the problem is our politics currently is completely about it's all identity politics. It's about our group against your group, and that's just the world we're living in. So you have to sort of get down and dirty at times.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, strikes, obviously they're not the only strikes, the RMT. So let's find it here. BT announced recently over £400 million profits for one quarter, the first quarter of the year. And they rub it in their members' faces.
And they've had a big
takeover. And the BT went on strike. BT employees went on strike recently. It was the first BT strike in 24 years.
Brilliant.
So not 24 years, sorry. It was the first strike since 1987.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first call centre strike ever. And meanwhile, the boss of BT, the CEO, got a 32% pay rise this year, up to $3.5 million. And when he was asked about, and this is, I've not seen the interview, but I've read various newspaper outlets reporting this, that when he was asked about how do you just, the fact that you're getting paid so much, the company's making £400 million profits in a quarter, and are on track to make, over £1 billion
this year
profit this year.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the workers are taking a real terms pay cut. And just like that, and he allegedly said, it is what it is. Yeah.
Well, that is the answer, though, isn't it? Because they can, because they want to. The fundamental issue, and I think we've talked about it a few times, it's just that the job of every big business the job of every CEO, every board member, every executive at a big company is to make more money than they did yesterday.
Yeah.
When I was a manager in retail, one of the biggest parts of our job, and no matter how they tried to dress it up, was about your numbers. We had league tables, and even when they got rid of the league tables, we had league tables, and we were updated daily. And you know, if you had a day that was like a couple of £100 down from the same day last week, you'd be asked in the next conference call, what happened that day?
Yeah.
Like, what did you do? And it's like, what do you mean? Just less people came in today?
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah, no, and this is my big problem.
And it's what everything's based on.
This is why I lean towards renationalisation, is that these things, the railway, heating, which obviously we'll get onto, because like I said, you had a bit of internet fame with it, and we'll touch on that.
Internet fame.
But heating, railway infrastructure, you know, transport infrastructure, these are public services. These are things that people need to live on.
Yeah.
And they're there to not just to live on, but to live on with a little bit of dignity and respect. They should not be about profits. They should not be about putting money in anyone's pocket. They should be about providing the service to the people, and that is it.
To the best level that it can.
And that is it. Yeah. And meanwhile, let me just open up because I've got the figures here. So Centrica, who own British Gas, announced a 500% increase in 6-month profit to 1.3 billion.
That makes sense. Look how much more everyone's getting charged.
They gave out £59 million in dividends. Also,
Centrica, isn't it? The company that owns British Gas.
And also, you look at Shell. Obviously, petrol's a big issue at the moment. It's going up and up and up. And the price of oil, by the way, has come back down. Yep. This is the thing. Whenever they put prices up, they justify it by saying, "Well, our wholesale prices are higher."
When the prices
drop,
when the
wholesale
again,
prices go back down, the
are.
Prices to the consumer, to you and me, they never come back down, do they?
Or if they do, it's very, very slight amount, and it's still not.
Shell recorded £11.5 billion in the last quarter.
Yeah.
They announced a $6 billion $11.5 billion. They announced a $6 billion share buyback, which basically gives the current
money,
which allows people to buy the shares back off the public. You know, some public do own it. No, there's a big incentive to give it back to give the money back to the people who already have money.
Of course.
So it's the CEO of Shell. I apologise, not who did I accuse just now? It was the CEO of BT. It wasn't. It was the CEO of Shell who says it is what it is.
Yeah.
And just to by the way, to like you said about Martin Lewis, recently gave some estimations. He estimated that roughly 10 million people will fall into fuel poverty. Now, fuel poverty used to just mean not people spending more than a certain percentage of their wages. So I think it was about 15%. So if you were spending 20% of your wages on fuel, you were considered in fuel poverty. That in the last few years has changed. It now literally means that after you've put out all your bills, you will fall below the poverty line. So 14.5 million people are already in poverty.
Yeah.
Martin Lewis estimates that another 10 million are going to go into poverty when the energy price caps rise again in October. So that's just to give you an idea. There's 67 million people in the UK.
Yeah.
That means I love the lean forward there. For anyone not on YouTube, you need to get on that and see how serious the conversation just turned. So 22% of the population are already in poverty.
Yeah.
It's estimated, and Martin Lewis said that it's a low-end estimation.
What, over a quarter of the population?
Or 22%. 22% of the population are already in poverty. 14% of the UK population is about to go into poverty.
So that means we're going to have 36%.
Which means that by the end of the year, we could have 36% of the population in poverty. And just that doesn't mean that everyone else is fine. There'll be plenty more hovering just above that poverty line, millions more. And when the price caps go up again next year, we could be facing millions more going further. I'm not going to
say who they are, but recently I know someone who's just got their state pension, and they've been going through their finances, like literally line by line, to see what their outgoings are, what their incomings are, and because they now get state pension, they're going to get less of all their private pensions, and a really backwards way of taxing you on stuff. Because basically I was learning that you don't. Yeah, it's to do with the fact you're not taxed on your national insurance contributions and shit like that, and that's why you then pay tax on your state pension or something. It's proper.
It's ridiculous. And look,
it's proper wanky. But basically, as it stands, this person's just about all right. You know what I mean? Like they've got enough to cover their outgoings, but not a huge amount left over after that. So now, come the new year, this person's genuinely worried about what it means. Like, all right, so I'm just getting by now, but it's going to get worse.
Yeah, and I listened to an economist this week speaking about it quite eloquently, I thought, and quite articulately. Sort of said that actually, money still exists in society.
Yeah.
The adequate money is still in society. It's just not with the people who are expected to pay more and more, which is you and me. And we're not being paid to match what we're expected to pay out. And I think the really interesting things that said is that a lot of people particularly in the government and whatever, have been saying that actually if you pay the people more, that leads to more inflation. And they say workers' wages push inflation. But that's interesting because since 2010, when the Tory party took over, inflation has been rife. It has been going up and up, and obviously the last couple of years even more. But it's still it's been going up quite high since they took over. But wages have been relatively stagnant.
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways. Do you know what I mean?
Not a real time decrease or like a real terms decrease.
And also, we shouldn't. I know I don't want to mention. We're not meant to mention the B word.
Yeah.
But how can
Brexit hasn't helped?
But how can a country imposing such economic sanctions on itself not have an effect on the economy?
Yeah. The problem is this all started for me when I heard about trickle-down economics and the whole reason why that sort of became a thing, and it's sort of
that absolute bullshit.
One of the reasons why capitalism has taken the shape it has, because basically in America they started unleashing the banks and financial sector and basically believing that if you put more money at the top, it would eventually come down.
And it's a fine ideology, but the money never trickles down.
Yeah, because on a logical sense, it makes sense. If they're earning more, they can afford to pay you more, you then spend that money, and it just goes in a nice circle.
There are a lot of, let's say, leaks near the top of the chain.
But the problem was the people that were at the head of these things decided very quickly, well, actually, it's very easy for us not to pass the money down and keep the profits up here.
I said there's a lot of leaks at the top, so the money doesn't always trickle down.
No, it doesn't. And the problem is, if that is the way we do everything to allow business, whatever field it is, whatever industry, to just grow to whatever level it can grow to, because in theory there shouldn't be a company as big as Amazon. There shouldn't be a company that can meet that level of demand.
In terms of my human ideology as well, if
it shouldn't.
As long as people are hungry in the world, dying of diseases that are easily curable and preventable, no one should be making billions of pounds of profit.
No, and the problem is,
or even have billions of pounds.
The argument of the money isn't there to deal with all this shit.
It's like it's just in the wrong places.
Bollocks!
Like I said, like we just said,
it's
Shell.
Greed. It's people's fear of having to give up, it's what we said loads of times on this podcast. People have an irrational fear that by giving other people more, you end up with less, and it's such a backwards ideology.
Well, as we've just said, Shell, in a 3-month period,
400 million,
$11.5 billion. $11.5 billion in a 3-month span.
Yeah.
Don't tell me the money's not there.
No.
Centrica made 5 times their profit. They made £1.3 billion.
But the problem,
don't tell me the money isn't there.
Our country has gotten into is the backbone of our economy is the finance sector. So the problem, it's a situation where it's almost symbiotic now. So that if we overtly or over harshly curtail what the financial industry can do and how much money it can make, that directly affects how our country succeeds. So we can't go in it unless we find other ways of making money.
But the energy price cap, and Ofgem are doing nothing, by the way.
No.
The energy price cap is expected to rise. It's going to rise to £3,850 in January, and it's going to keep going up until 2024 at least.
Yeah.
There has to be a point, and this is the thing I just wanted to mention, that a real sign of how expensive times are right now. McDonald's has just put up the price of their cheeseburger for the first time in.
Oh, have they? What, from 99p
to £1.19?
Oh wow.
That should be the writing point.
No, but the thing is, things as basic as if you wanted even 2 months ago to buy a bag of Maltesers, they're always on offer. Normally that would have cost you £1 for a bag of Maltesers if you go to a supermarket, right? They've now on offer £1.35. I buy my cat's treats, right? Up until last month, they were 89p on offer. They're now 2 for £2.50.
Yeah,
Like it's not
everything. It's everything.
And I see these tweets about it's gone up by £400 a year for people in their baskets, and I think basically whatever figure any institution tries to give you, triple it.
Yeah,
easily triple it. There's no way people are only spending £400 more on their shopping. There's no way.
Well, it's like you said, I've already felt it personally. I've seen massive increases.
And the only way I see this going is a really horrific way. People dying.
Yeah.
People losing their homes. People having nowhere to live. Our country genuinely declining because it's hard to imagine that even if the worst starts happening and people are getting thrown on the streets because they can't afford to pay energy bills and they can't afford to pay their rent, can't afford to eat.
And I think the
government still aren't going to do anything. You made a very
interesting point on when you commented on your and you got a little bit of notoriety. But
yeah.
I think it's very insulting that companies are announcing millions and billions of pounds in profits, hundreds of millions and billions.
Buying it, Jay.
And meanwhile, at the same time, they're setting up food banks because their employees can't afford to live on the wages they're paying.
Well, how about you just give them a fair wage? Whoa. Let's not go too far there. Yeah. And the problem
Talk us through your moment of fame.
It's a tweet with 27 likes, folks. It went viral.
That's big for me. That's big for me.
It's big for me. LBC basically tweeted about the Centrica profits, and I just said that it just reinforces what I believe, that companies can make less and can afford to make less. They just choose not to. The money is sat there in big companies' bank accounts waiting to pay people.
No, they look at it, they go, well,
but they give it to the people at the top.
They go, we're making, like, let's say we're making 500 million, but let's say we're making £1 billion a year, and that's a lot a year, but this wasn't even a year, the Centrica thing. It was over a much shorter period of time. But let's say we're making £1.3 billion a year, and we go, well, you know, our price is that the price for us to provide the service is going up a little bit. Now, we could not pass that on to the consumer.
Yeah.
And actually, instead of making £1.3 billion profit, we actually make £600 million profit.
Yeah.
Or we could keep making £1.3 billion profit and just charge them more. Fuck it, charge them more. And it's like, no, don't like. And also, there comes a point where it breaks. Like, Don't Pay UK is a campaign right now that are trying to get as many people as they can. And they want the entire nation. Yeah. They're trying to campaign for the entire nation to simply cancel your direct debits and just not pay the energy companies on the 1st of October when the prices go up.
Yeah.
Because it's
difficult. I get it. Like, because the thing is, I said to...
It's that breaking
in
point.
That tweet, I said I ended up having a conversation with someone that responded to me. And I said...
You had a friend.
What gets proven by the strikes... Because like even James O'Brien, when having a conversation with that guy from the army, he was like, right, so if they're not allowed to strike,
what can they do?
What can they do? What would you allow them to do to protest their rights? And this was one of the things I wanted to say. That one of the misconceptions at the moment is that, you know, they signed the contract, that sort of bullshit. Well, actually, no. They signed a contract with better terms than what they're now being offered. They're trying to be forced off of the terms they're already on. Yeah. They've not demanded anything of the company didn't want to give them. They're on what the company allowed them to have. The company have just decided now, you've got too many rights and we want to take them away. It's ridiculous. But I said to this person, like, what are your other options? There aren't any. The only option in the end of the day is collective action. And you can either do it peacefully or violently. And I hope it stays. I can only see for the general public it getting to a point where some sort of protest is needed. It's difficult with.
I think
the problem with not paying your bills is what that does to your credit score, and your credit score is a key part of your future if you want to own a home.
I think when the thing goes up when the prices go up again next year, I think we'll see civil unrest.
Yeah,
I do. Across the country, I think we will see.
There's a good chance.
I don't think they'll necessarily be full scale riots, but there will be something similar to rioting. I do believe it because people can't afford it now, and they're looking at not being able to afford it even more. They're going to be even more in debt, even worse.
And the thing is, it's a bit like when I worked for my previous company, there were certain things they were squeezing, like our labour and things like that. And I remember saying to one of my area managers, like, at what point does it break? Because it will. You'll get to a point where stores can no longer operate effectively.
Yeah.
And it's the same for anyone's life. If you keep squeezing the resources we have at the lowest end, eventually something breaks.
Because you're going to look at the point where people are going, they're getting in debt to pay their bills, or they're simply getting cut off because they can't afford to pay their bills. Their credit score's going down, like you said. And then what you get is you get people who have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And that's what a government doesn't want.
Kids, man. you're risking children's lives.
But
like,
just
that's the bare bones of it. There's families out there.
But to look at it selfishly from a governmental perspective, to put yourself in the shoes of the government, the one thing you don't want is people with nothing to lose, and you are giving them nothing. You are taking away everything they have to lose.
What would you say is the number one responsibility of a government? It's the safety and well-being of the people that live under their care.
Yeah.
And for at least the last 10 years, it's been. I don't care what argument you have. You cannot argue to me that they have given a shit about working people's lives. They haven't.
No.
Everything for as long as I can remember, it must be for the last 10 years since David Cameron and George Osborne were in power.
First thing they did was introduce austerity measures.
Yeah. And they would tell people that wanting to look after people, disabled people, social care, elderly people, it was a childish wish list.
Yeah, childish wish
Mr.
list.
Dominic Raab, a member of the cabinet,
Actual quote.
he said that to a woman who was disabled. It's a childish wish list. These are the people we're dealing with. Yeah. These are the people we're dealing with. And it's why ultimately I keep getting frustrated and I don't know what we do, because too many people are still okay with it. That's what worries me.
Like I said, and
I don't know whether that's because there's still a gap between us and the next level. Do you know what I mean? Like, the more the middle class gets squeezed, I think that will be what makes it more of a turning point, because that next level of people turn against the government as well as us.
If there was civil unrest, and I don't mean riots, but
if
more of a peaceful
march,
mashup, would you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I would happily go to something outside our MP's office and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing to help us? I've not heard anything from you.
No, I would, and we've obviously been right on the edges of, in the Greater London area. Yeah, I'd join anything. Like, any protest that was happening up there, I'd join.
Mr. Elliot Colburn, our MP, and I will call him out, you have been happy to stand by and be a member of this Conservative Party. You were happy to stand under Boris Johnson. For that, you should be ashamed. But the fact you're not out on the street trying to reassure people that you're doing everything in your power to hold the government you're a part of to account.
I know, and what's so worrying about the leadership race, I didn't necessarily think we touched on
None of them care.
Well, what's so worrying is, literally the platform they're all running on is, look how
more
shit the
austerity measures.
They're all going, look how shit the government's been for the last 12 years. Yeah. I'm the one to fix it. It's like, you were the one who made it. Yeah. How can you possibly ask the public? And you're literally telling us, do you know who's really let you down?
This
the Tories. So do you know who can really back you? I can't.
Like, one of the things I was thinking about the other day is, since we've had the Conservatives in charge, there has been zero stability. We've had a new government every couple of years, a new Prime Minister.
And with it, by the way, every outgoing Prime Minister gets to elect people to the House of Lords.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, needs massive reform. The fact that we can have, Boris is supposedly putting 50 peers in the House of Lords. They're in there for life.
Before he goes?
They're in there. They're in there for life. There's no electoral process. There's no like, my seat's up for change again. Once they're in, they're in.
Yeah.
And all they have to do is vote Tory on every policy. It's worrying. Mm-hmm. But yeah, sorry.
No, it's just shit, man. I don't know what the answer is.
It's getting harder and harder to maintain a positive outlook.
Yeah, and I felt that way for a really long time now. And like with Rishi Sunak, for example, like, because I was saying to Leanne, the problem is, like, everyone knew under Boris that basically he wasn't in charge of anything. He might have set out, all right, well, we want to do this, this and this, but in terms of the actual implementation of it, he wasn't directly involved in anything. And the only time he ever did get involved in anything was when shit really hit the fan and you needed the Prime Minister involved in it. Otherwise, people were left to get on with whatever they wanted. So what that meant is everything our government did financially under Boris Johnson was thought up, overseen and implemented by one man and his team, Rishi Sunak. And that man has had the gall to go on national television
and tell us that
look you
was
down
wrong.
The camera and say everything we've done financially is wrong, but I can fix it. It's like, you fucking cunt. I'm sorry, he's a scumbag. Absolute scumbag. And I really hope he does. I think, as much as I don't want Liz Truss, I don't want Rishi Sunak.
And we need a general election, we said it, like we do. Well, do you know what? I mean, is there anything else you'd like to mention before I move on to some sort of lighter ones to end on?
I hope you've got lighter ones, because I've got I've got doom and gloom, bro. That's fine. No, I'm more or less done.
Okay, okay then. First of all, let's have a look at that. Are you aware of the drag queen story time that took place in Bristol last week? Protesters turned up, started accusing the parents of like taking their kids to be groomed. calling
Yeah,
the
this is a thing
pedophiles.
now, isn't it? The version of grooming now is people are afraid that trans people or
first of all,
LGBTQ plus people are grooming kids to be.
Are these people just not aware of? And this is, by the way, that was the argument back when Section 28 was introduced, and it.
Oh, was it?
And Rishi wants to read. Yeah.
Okay.
But so
I didn't know that was a thing, by the way.
No, we spoke about it the other week on the pod, didn't we? A couple of weeks ago. No, so yeah, I think it's an interesting thing because first of all, have these people never heard of pantomime?
Yeah, we've got a huge tradition in this country of dressing, drag, and cross-dressing. I
mean, like 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s comedians literally made a living off it. You know, French and Saunders. Literally,
they were brilliant.
Half
as well.
Their thing was dressing up. Every TV doll out that you can think of has done a sketch or sketches as like little old ladies or But also, I think it's an interesting thing. Someone pointed out, and I just thought it's an interesting.
So, what did these people do that people got upset about?
It was just drag queen story time. So drag queens come in and they read stories to kids. School? So it's at libraries, public libraries. Parents have to put places on it. They come in, they read kids, and in the drag way, it's kind of a bit flamboyant and it's a bit eccentric. And the stories come to life. It's fun. It's fun story time.
Look, what I would say is, I mean, when I was a kid, we went to a hotel in Greece called the Marina Beach at Crete. It was a lovely hotel.
Sorry, they're paying you for that?
No, it's one of my... We went there quite a few times when we were kids. It was like our favourite place to go as a family. It got worse over the years, but like the first few, do you know, like you have those holidays that you have your best memories from.
I better see some of the money from this ad.
It's filled with 2 minutes. I'm not even going to say it.
But yeah.
We're going to end up getting a certain reputation.
Did they have a drag act?
They did. They did the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the entertainment team.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, in the actual thing, you have cross-dressing in that the main person, like the Tim Curry.
Dr. Frankenfurter.
Yeah, it's yeah, we saw all of that as a kid, and he was in a giant bin bag at one point when it was the sex scene, and it was to joke that he had a giant knob and condom, but he was saying, look, kids, we're making Pokemon, and like, it was just...
It's fun.
It was fun. And honestly, as a kid, I didn't think anything of it, and kids don't.
One of the things I pondered about it that someone posted out was that it's kind of this problem with drag queens, because there's no such issue with drag kings, but it's a sexualization of femininity, and it's inherently sexist. It's you're sexualizing femininity in the sense that femininity is essentially a sexual act in itself. Because just by the act of being feminine,
because they're the reproductive one. Do you know what I mean? They're the one with the reproductive organs.
They're sexualized just from being feminine. It's like, you can be feminine without sexual. Like there's
no, absolutely. Thing. But do you think that's perhaps where
just an interesting thought?
Why us as men in the past? Because sometimes I want because obviously the main representation
why
of
us
women
men
up
have
until
slept with drag queens
the last 10 years. I would say, a bit like with the Tories coming in, maybe they brought it in more equality. I doubt it, but I don't know. Up until recently, the main representation of women is sexualisation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what is that? Just because we're gross assholes that wanted to sexualise women, or was that something that came from the fact we see women as more sexual creatures because they're the ones that carry a baby and that we reproduce?
It comes from the patriarchy. It comes from the fact that we consider us to be important and worth everything, and women are literally there to serve our purposes, and our purposes
just
are sexual desires.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, just because we're gross bastards, basically.
I mean, like the protesters tried to name and shame the police officers that were there protecting the story time.
Yeah.
And it's like you're allowing grooming, you're encouraging it and whatever. Anyway, the drag queen who's organised it. Exactly. But the drag queen who organised it is called Ada, as in like the name Ada HD, which I think is a great name, by the way. Ada ADHD. Great name. Solid drag name. What would yours be? Drag name.
I don't know. How is it you're supposed to work it out? Isn't it like...
No,
but there's like the old fashioned
I've
ones,
not named
like
many
chose
queens.
a pet's name and your mum's first street name.
I don't know, but you just like that's just a good pun. That's just a solid pun.
I can't really think of a pun off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'll put you on the spot.
Maybe Bubble and Sweet.
That's all right. That's good. But anyway, the point is they actually ADHD fought all this by changing all of the times and the locations of the performances, informing only the people who were attending.
Yeah.
And there were no further protests because none of them knew where it was, and they were all a great success. All of the slots were fully booked.
All the kids loved it.
The other one that I've got, like a quite fun one. Oh, I also can just say like like rippers to Bernard Cribbins. That one hurt.
I don't know him.
That one hurt. No, why would you? You're not a Doctor Who fan massively.
No, I did see it. Obviously, it's sad someone's died, but yeah.
Like, you know,
Rippers.
He was like the railway guy, the Railway Children, which is a film I've never actually seen, to be honest. I think I did in primary school, and it just never left a mark
Never
on me.
heard of it.
But did you see why Prince William was trending this week?
No.
Hashtag Prince of Pegging. Apparently.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
No.
Apparently,
And
that's his thing.
he's open.
No, he's not open. He's not open about it at all.
Right.
The story's been leaked. That
Right.
said that
Is it a Richard Gere style thing? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know.
Like, I love that though, isn't it? Like Richard Gere likes putting a gerbil up his
putting
arse
gerbils
in
up
a
his
tube.
bumhole. But what I found interesting was the fact that a lot of people didn't know what it was and were googling
What, pegging?
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
We're Googling
I
it.
mentioned it in front of my mum a couple of months ago, and like talking to the aunt, and I had to explain to my mum what pegging was, and she was just right.
We've got to explore the context in which that came up. Well, no, we don't. Your sex life
I
is your
have
sex
no
life.
idea. No, but me and Leanne, no, I can, maybe, I don't know, maybe a cheeky finger I'd be open
You know,
to.
a little,
You know, let me see how it feels sort of thing, but I don't think we're going down
But a well-lubed finger.
yeah, we'll go down the road with a finger, but not with,
You're just going full dildo.
no,
Too much.
no.
Would you like to explain to our listeners
What pegging
what
is?
pegging is for those
So
that don't know?
pegging, I believe, is when a lady straps.
A lady,
A
as you like to
lady.
say.
No, I
say.
feel like I stole that too much from another podcast I listened to. Again, it was one of those things that
It
just
is
sort
one
of
of your.
slipped in.
It's one of your trademarks. Is just stealing things from other podcasts.
I still, mate, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a full-on plagiarist. I steal everything from everything. My personality over the years.
Are all
has
your
been
ideas original, or are you just stealing them from other podcasts?
No, some of them are original.
Oh, I was just going to get really worried. I was like, should I be the ideas man? Do I have to take
But no,
over?
the thing is, I consume a lot of content that I like. Do you know what I mean? I tend not to absorb or like watch anything that I know I'm not going to like, if that makes sense. So when I like something, I really like it, and bits from it
Stick with you.
they sort of just slip in, and that was one of them. And since you called me out on it on the pod,
I just say
pod
slip in.
I've,
Slip in. Excellent usage of that phrase.
yeah, especially when talking about ladies. Yeah, but other than that one, I've tried to cut it out.
But yes, sorry, you were explaining
What was I explaining? You interrupted
what pegging was.
yeah, that little thing.
I hope it's little.
So pegging.
It helps.
Right, kids, listen in here. Right, this is your Uncle Big Daddy Big. Is that
Big Daddy Big, I like it.
Big Daddy Big?
It kind of sounds like what your name would be if you were in like a musical.
Yeah.
You know, it's Big Daddy Big.
No, it'd be my DJ name, Big Daddy Big.
Big Daddy Big. Wicka wicka wah.
Yeah, the Big Daddy Big.
Would you say it at the start of every song as well, like every
The
set?
Heat. Yeah, I would be like who is it? Pitbull. There's like I'm Mr. SM6. You know, Mr. Big Daddy Big.
Yeah, it's Mr. Big Daddy Big. Dum, 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 dum,
Mr.
dum,
Local.
Dum, dum, dum. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I'd be a bit like a Shanda Paul. Do you know what I mean? Like, bum bum bum, just
Well,
in
that's
the
what you
background.
could be if Pitbull's Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah.
You could be Mr. Zone of Terror.
Mr. Zone of Terror. Yes. I think we've got to develop a character for me to be
Big
in
Daddy
one
Big
day
and
on
his
the
Zone of
pod.
Terror.
And you'll interview me as
I'd love that.
Big Daddy Big, and
I
I've
would
got to
love
try and
that.
stay in character for the whole pod. Maybe get Alex in on it.
For show.
Yeah. I really need to sit down and work out who he is as a person. Do you know what I mean? Get inside his
like
head.
as an actor.
I'm
you
going
really
to have to
need
go
find
Heath
your
Ledger
clip.
on this
Yeah,
shit.
You need
I'm
to
going to
really
have to
get in it.
deep delve.
You might have to become an active part of the hip hop
I'm
scene.
going to have to sit. Could you imagine? Like, you text me like, mate, how's work going? I've given it all up.
I'm
I'm in the grime
really
scene.
committed to the Big Daddy Big character. I'm like, what, the thing we were doing from one episode of the podcast? Like, I have gone all in.
Yeah, I'm doing my first show tonight.
I would love that. I absolutely love that.
Oh, do you know what? I just imagine trying to explain it to Leanne. Babe, I'm giving up everything to pursue a career.
Sorry, why have you spent all of our savings on gold teeth?
Because you got to fake it till you make it. Do you know what I mean? You got
Gotta
to
live the
invest
part.
in your future.
You're like, listen, bitch. You know, that's
Go-
how Big Daddy Big. No, do
Go
you know
all
what Big
Andrew
Daddy
Tate
Big?
on a-
Yeah, well, I mean, Big Daddy Big probably doesn't call bitch. He probably uses some other like child-friendly term, some PG-friendly term. You know,
Yeah, what would that be though? I think
listen, female.
Listen, you humanoid with titties.
And humanoid with titties. I think that's Big Daddy Big's reference point for women.
You humanoid titty haver.
But off point, what is pegging?
We're still not there, are we?
Not there.
I'm just easing it in slowly.
As an expert pegger might.
So
Pegger, is that a
pegging
thing? Yeah, I think
is
it
when
is.
I imagine it's mostly men and women because it'd be odd for two men to peg. I guess that's just
You
bumming.
could, like, if you had like some kind of problem with your penis.
Yeah, that's fair. You could,
might.
but so yeah, it's two people. Normally it involves a man because he's the one. So the other participant, normally a lady, but don't want to be discriminatory, could be a man as well. Also, you don't know how they identify, Jake. So you just got to be careful of these things. But that person adorns a strap-on phallic type product, normally a dildo.
What is a strap-on phallic? No, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there.
But yeah, they strap a dildo on. I imagine they lube it up and then they insert it into a man's anal region.
Depends how kind they're being.
You hope depends how angry you are.
You hope, you want the lube.
Yeah, I imagine if your missus is upset, you're not getting any lube. Like if you've pissed her off, if you've not been taking the bins out, for example.
Imagine that you go up to the bedroom and she's there with the dildo and no lube in sight, and you're like, "What did I do? What did I do?" Tell you what though, you take the bins out next time, wouldn't you?
You're fucking right, you would.
You know,
yeah, after not being able to sit down for a week, you would be more than happy to take the bins out.
It's quite extreme punishment, but it's effective punishment.
It is effective punishment. It's always worked on me. Damn it!
It's effective behaviour correctment. That's what we always like to call it, not punishment.
I mean, there's other ways you could do it. I'd rather just get sprayed in the face by water every now and again. Do you know what I mean? I don't necessarily want to be penetrated, but whatever
I think
works.
There's probably we could go full Guantanamo Bay on this. We could open up a list of effective ways to get you to change your behaviour.
Yeah, before pegging.
But anyway, Prince William supposedly likes a bit of pegging.
How has this come to the fraud? Who's alleging? Is it Kate?
Well, apparently he doesn't do it with Kate.
No,
that's the story.
So he's sleeping around on her.
I mean, the story suggests, and I've no idea how accurate this is, but the story suggests that she's fine with it because it's the idea that she doesn't necessarily want it. And we've said it before. I feel we've actually talked about this sex positivity on the pod before. We've gone where we've both said that. Or in fact, I said and you didn't. But I said if it was something that my partner was into that I really wasn't.
Yeah, I think
I'd be
that
fine
was
with them
we
going
had
somewhere else to
question
do it.
From one of our listeners, if I remember correctly, that he'd found out his wife was sleeping with a lady, and he was okay with it because it was something he couldn't give her. But they still had a healthy sex life themselves. She was just bumping.
Picture Kate saying, "Look, well, I don't want to fuck you up the arse, but you want it, fine, go and get it."
Plus, look, his dad slept around on his mum. You had an heir and you had a spare. You had a mistress, and it's just sort of the way they do things, don't they?
But it's it was just a nice, slightly silly note to end on.
Can you? Does he look like? I mean, yeah, the posh men are into punishment, aren't they? Usually, these
big in the city, innit? It's big in the city.
Yeah, they like being dominated. They like
big in the city.
Do you reckon they ever tried it though?
The old financial
this is going to ruin any chance of us getting a knighthood, bro. But
have they ever tried what?
Do you think Will and Kate do you reckon she ever gave him a good scene?
I reckon at uni.
Yeah, you reckon he's been into it that long? Do you think it's a long-term thing?
I don't think it's the kind. I mean, obviously you do discover...
Do you think he started off with rimming or just straight into penetration?
I don't know, you do discover kinks as you get older and stuff, but I think generally you've got it mostly sussed out when you're that sort of age.
I'm not kink-shaming. Ultimately, I mean, would it, if it came out as true, if somehow he confirmed it, how would you feel about having a king that gets pegged?
I personally wouldn't bother me at all.
No, I guess not. It doesn't...
Be better if he came out and owned it.
Would it, though?
For me.
For you?
For my opinion of him, yeah. It's
okay. What? So do you believe it? Do you think it's true?
I don't know. I mean, people make up any shit, won't they?
Yeah. Do you know who leaked it or who's saying it?
No, I just saw it was trending on Twitter.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a bit of a Richard Gere one that people are just throwing it out there to see.
It might be. It's not quite as bizarre as the Richard Gere one.
I don't know.
It's pretty straightforward.
Prince getting pegged. The pegging Prince.
Yeah, but...
What's the name of the episode?
Yeah, fine. I'm cool with that.
The pegging Prince.
Who's not... This is maybe not the episode title,
the
but
Prince.
the tagline. Who's getting fucked worse, the Prince or the public?
The Prince, the Princess, and the strap-on? No. 2 royals, 1 strap-on?
2 royals, 1 dick.
2 royals,
2 dicks.
2 royals, 2 dicks.
But like I said, the tagline's definitely got to be who's getting fucked worse, the Prince or the public.
Yeah.
Because right now it's
Pegging or
public.
poverty.
Pegging or poverty.
Is that the name?
That's the name of the
Pegging
episode.
or poverty. Yeah.
Would you rather get fucked by a mistress or fucked
if
by
I'm being honest,
the government?
I can see it because, like I said, I think some of these
Fucked by your
rich,
wife, she's up
powerful
for it.
men are into.
I think it's huge in the city, isn't it?
And
It's huge.
also, like, if
It's because they're the power. It's because they're powerful
I
day
don't
to
think
day.
he's a particularly attractive guy, but yeah, when you're in a powerful position, your options and what's available to you on a sexual level is undeniably.
But when you're powerful day to day and you like to, your escapism is to be
normal stuff must get
non-powerful.
boring.
Yeah.
Like, it's why you get these weirdos that like being choked and like properly choked. And weirdos is the wrong word, sorry, but
Very the wrong word.
But those people that are proper into asphyxiation and like wearing a goat mask and having their balls tickled at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know why you're going to read my blog if you're going to drag me out like this.
I tried it once. Do you know what I mean? It was rude not to.
You tried my blog or you tried the goat tickle ball thing?
Both. You were there.
I hope so. Still got the film.
You were using the feather.
Yeah, you know what? In hindsight, I shouldn't have just picked up a feather off the street.
No,
I should have gone for pigeon feather was not the
bird
one.
flu didn't go down well.
No, the pigeon feather was not the one. I should have looked for something. I should have invested
told you,
more seriously in it.
We go for goose feathers, and you should know that with what you come from.
Goose feathers, like peasant feathers, what we call them. Poor people feathers.
What's your feathers then, Jay? What's a posh feather to you?
I like a peacock feather.
Yeah.
Can't get many peacocks. There's a lot of birds you've never heard of.
I just imagine on your grounds, because they're grounds.
They are grounds.
The peacocks, the poor fuckers walking around with like none of their big feathers because they're just stuffed into cushions and pillows.
Imagine if I did pack out my house like we describe it as. Imagine the shock the bin men are going to get when they come past and they just see like peacocks crammed into the driveway.
You're not killing the peacocks, bro.
No, but they're quite crammed in. If I let
but why would they be in the bin?
In the bin, just on the driveway, just like 3 or 4 peacocks crammed onto the driveway.
No, but they're on
because
the
I'm
grounds,
like,
man.
exactly,
You've got the woodlands. You've got that meadow. There's the you call it a pond, but it's more
the
like
meadow. You mean the
the
meadow, the opening, or the meadow, the stripper that I don't allow anyone else to see?
Both.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
both. We've got both.
Yeah. Like when you ask me if I want to dine by the meadow, I'm always like in two minds as to what we're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, not that meadow, bro.
Just wait till the fucking servants when we tell them they've got to, hang the washing out. They
You've
always
just
confused when we offer them the choice.
I feel like you need to be nicer to them. Like Paul Consuela, she worked so hard.
They're never sure when we tell them they need to go for a damn good pegging. They're just never sure they need to go and hang the washing out. Or
yeah, you can't peg a woman, can you?
Well, she's got a bum hole.
Is it?
I don't know what the issue is here.
Is it pegging because it's a dildo, or is it pegging because it's being done to a man? Like, what part of it makes it?
Well, it's because it's being done like anally. I don't know. Let me have a look.
Well, no, because anal's anal, isn't it? So like, is it pegging because it's
okay, anal with a dildo?
Yeah. Is that for a man being anally penetrated, or? What a podcast. We've gone from talking about the deprivation in the UK to royal pegging.
I'm just not finding any answers on this. Like, not any.
Well, people look. We'll put it out there for the people to tell us. I think.
No, I think the general consensus is that it is a heterosexual activity. That it is a woman or
banging
a man,
her husband or her other half or a sexual partner with a dildoic device.
Apparently. And apparently, you're now in royal company. If that's your thing.
Well, that means there's 3 of us at least in here, Jake.
And
by which I mean your mum, but me, your mum, and Prince William. That's a weird party, but
she does what the paying customers want. That's not that. Supply and demand, my man. Supply and
demand.
I
don't pay. I take it away.
If what a great way to make a living though. Like, just imagine someone goes like, "What do you do for a living?" She's like,
"I have sex."
I fuck Prince Wills. And like, oh, you have sex with like? No. I fuck Prince Wills. I make him ride me.
Do you reckon he then has normal sex afterwards?
Not to feel more manly, kind of, not manly, but
yeah,
it's manly to be paid.
Toxic,
like, I don't want to say that it is manly to be paid. You could be, because I'll tell you now.
If anything, it's more manly.
You've got to be very secure in your own.
Absolutely.
And you've got to be pretty confident to take something.
Yeah, there was a stand-up comedian I like, and I won't trample on his joke, but like he had an ex that wanted to try, but she'd done it with her previous partners. She enjoys doing it, and she said, like, I don't know what you might think about it, but they always enjoy it. And he was like, well, like, I wouldn't go straight to that. Maybe like at the moment it's a no, but maybe if we try X, Y, and Z, maybe I'll consider it. And he said, like, we could look into what we would use perhaps to maybe ease my mind over it. And she's like, oh, well, don't worry about that. I've already got one. And he was like, I don't care how you've bleached that thing. If it's been used before, it's going nowhere near me. But yeah, so there's a lot of etiquette around that shit, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
You know, do you know what? I think that's the question for today. If you could write to us at CrossingSwords19@gmail.com, hit us up at CrossingSwords_pod on Instagram, send us some DMs, slide into our DMs, not into our bumholes, just into our DMs. Slide into our DMs on Twitter at Swords Crossing, and hit us up on Facebook, Crossing Swords. And we want to know, what is the etiquette? What is the formal etiquette around pegging?
Yeah, like, who asks who? It must be driven by, well, not always, but I'd imagine most of the time it must be something perhaps women are into more than...
See, I always imagine that most sexual things are driven by the men. And that most things are just a man going...
No, but I think that's probably the majority, you're right, but I definitely think there'll be a percentage of women that enjoy...
It's not just about... Because it's not about being into it. It's about being confident enough to ask for it. And I think the patriarchal society suggests that generally men ask for things, women don't.
Yeah.
So it has to take a woman who's very confident and comfortable in herself to ask for something.
Yeah.
Also, because if you ask your partner, you have to gauge it. Because if you just ask your partner, do you want, can I put a dildo up your backside?
Do you want to
get stuck?
They might respond really negatively to that, possibly homophobic to it. So you kind of got to gauge it.
Gay.
And that might be what your husband says when you say, "Can I bum you? Can I peg you?"
Mama like that. Mama like that.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what I
Nothing left to say. I think we've covered it.
Yeah, and on that note,
we've
guys,
done it all.
Just enjoy your
From
pegging.
energy to pegging.
Yeah, we'll workship it. We'll come back with Big Daddy Big at some point.
Big Daddy Big. What was your thing? What was your...
Big Daddy G, as I said.
Oh, Mr. Zone of Terror.
Yeah, something like that. Zone of Terror's in there somewhere.
It's Mr. Zone of Terror.
Yeah. Like me going on a deep dive and immersing myself and having notepads filled with Big Daddy G's. Big Daddy G, Big Daddy Big.
It's got to be Big Daddy G now, because you're not going to stick to Big Daddy Big. You've got to be Big Daddy G.
No, it can't be Big Daddy G. It's Big Daddy Big.
I'm just saying. We'll see what happens when you really go into it. But you're right. You've not spent. Yeah. You spent maybe like 20 minutes with the character now. You really need to sit with it.
I need to workshop it. Yeah, I need to sit down and write
a resignation letter first of all.
I think I'll start off with things like, what's his motivational, like, come up with scenarios like someone approaches Big Daddy Big with this problem. What would his response be?
Who are his hip hop icons?
Snoop's up there.
Yeah.
Snoop, the effortlessness.
Is there going to be a lot of crossover
flow
between Big Daddy Bigs, hip hop icons, and the hip hop people that you actually know?
No, I think another. Who's the 1 + 1 is 2?
Oh, the Big Shaq.
Quick maths. Big Shaq's another inspiration.
Michael, whatever his name is, the comedian.
Big Shaq.
Yeah.
And probably
2 + 2 is 4.
The awkwardness of a
Dad is 44.
David Brent. I'd have the cadence potentially of a sort of awkward.
You'd have. Have you seen
David Brent?
Equality Street. He did with Doc Brown.
No.
Could be that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm going to workshop it. I'm going to get myself into the mindset of Big Daddy Big. You know, how he feels, how he believes.
I'm ready to interview Big Daddy Big.
Whether he believes in God, I need to go through that journey with Big Daddy Big. I don't even know how he feels about God yet. I think he might be a highly religious man. He's a man of God.
Is he a feuding man? Big Daddy Big? Does he rap beefs?
If you step up
DJ
to him,
beefs? You step to him,
man gets shanked. What was...
Just come out of nowhere. It's already there.
It's already there. But guys, let us know. Do you want to meet Big Daddy Big? Do you want to?
I do.
Do you want to go on this journey? It might even be something we could do an episode on. You come in with questions and
listen to that. Do you want to go on this journey? You're already speaking like a DJ giving a promo interview.
Yeah.
It was a journey. It was a process. You know, I had to find
my
the real
DJ
me.
Style would be there is like a German techno rave music DJ I like called Brennan Hart that our good friend Lindsay and her other half got me into, and he's got songs like Follow the Light, like sort of songs with a bit of
positivity,
bit of faith and religion and love. Do you know what I mean? I
Big
reckon
Daddy Big's
my musical is going to be a mix of Snoop Dogg.
Big
country.
Daddy Big is definitely a lover.
Oh, he's a lover.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You have no idea.
Oh, yes. I have plenty idea.
Oozes everything. Do you know what I mean? Just he's oozing.
Sometimes physically oozes from too much love,
Yeah.
and that does need to be seen to by a doctor.
Yeah, but like, just don't mess with man. You know what I mean?
You're already there.
Yeah.
You're already there.
But yeah, guys, we'll see you soon with Big
Yeah.
Daddy Big.
I'm going to sign off from me, totally normal Jake, and from Mr. Zone of Terror over there. We'll see you soon.
Keep it sexy.